We've got a great case study coming up on the Team That Wouldn't Be Here campaign. We're very fortunate to have Andrew McKechnie. He is the Chief Creative Officer from Verizon, as well as Dan Donovan, McCann's Global Creative Director, and they're going to be stepping us through that entire very, very powerful campaign. They'll be joined at the back end of the session by Terry Lefton, who's going to ask some questions, but right now I would like to invite Andrew and Dan to the stage. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. So I'm Andrew McKechnie, Chief Creative Officer of Verizon. This is Dan Donovan, who runs our creative account out of McCann Erickson, New York. So I wanted to just kind of briefly give a bit of context to how this campaign ultimately came about this year. I would say last year was probably the first time that we came back to the Super Bowl after about 7 years hiatus, I guess. And you know, we wanted to make sure as a brand that if we were going to participate in a Super Bowl moment, that we really thought about what was our point of view and what was the message that we wanted to put out there. We're not one of those brands that can probably play the humor game. It's a tough audience, right? The Super Bowl. So for us, it was important to put out a message, in particular during a climate within culture that is obviously, there's a lot of tension. And so we wanted to make sure that the message we were putting out there was a positive one and also reflective of some of the communities that Verizon supports. And so last year we created a campaign called All Our Thanks, which was essentially connecting the first responder community with survivors of disasters and floods like that. Anything that was essentially people who had been touched by a first responder in their life. And we saw a lot of these stories just being on the front line, in communities that were affected by a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes and things that were happening in around 2017. And a lot of it, the stories that we were coming back were these people, survivors that never had the opportunity to say thanks to a first responder. So last year we reunited first responders and survivors, gave them the opportunity to say thank you, and that was kind of the kickoff of our first return to the Super Bowl. We had a great response from that, and we created a social kind of engagement program around that in terms of giving people the opportunity to say thanks as well to first responders. And through that, we also realized that coming out of that particular Super Bowl spot, that there was a lot of untold stories and a lot of people that were also impacted by first responders in other ways. And it's interesting when you think about the number of people across America, it equates to about 40 million. So this year, we wanted to kind of continue the narrative, think about what's the message that we want to put out there more broadly. How do we engage two very important communities for us, the NFL, a really key partnership for Verizon, and then also continue to support the first responders. And so as we developed this year's approach, we also really didn't want it to just be about a Super Bowl spot. Like, how do we engage an audience in different ways through different content formats, and also through a little bit more of a lead-in to the Super Bowl, and also post-Super Bowl. So rather than really just put all the pressure on a 60-second Super Bowl spot, like, how do you create a conversation that can live on past that too? So that's how we essentially came about the concept of the team that wouldn't be here. And Dan will kind of explain a little bit more, but essentially, as we started to really dig deeper into the stories around those that have been affected by first responders, we realized that there was obviously a lot of people within the actual NFL who had also, had their lives touched by first responders. So Dan, maybe if you can explain a little bit about the creative process on how we got to this point, because it wasn't easy.
Yeah, as you said, last year we had been exposed to so many people who were affected by first responders, and there is a number that someone on our strategy team came up with, that around 40 million people wouldn't be here today if it weren't for a first responder, whether that's someone who was directly saved by a first responder or their parent was saved by a first responder. And we thought, well, if there's 40 million people out there, there might be enough to build an entire NFL team, and there were. And so we kicked off the process of trying to find those stories, find those players who had personal experience with a first responder, someone who actually saved their life at some point in their life, and they credit themselves with why they were able to be successful in the NFL today. So that was the journey, to find 11 players and a coach to build the team that wouldn't be here, and to tell their story.
Yeah, and I think another really important aspect around this, in terms of just some of the success we had with it, was framing the NFL players in a completely different light, a very untold story in some ways, but very meaningful. Obviously, very important to them when you actually understand kind of the path that got them to where they are today as these amazing power athletes and superstar celebrities. But it's like there's this other side of the story that's never really been told, and you see it in what we'll show you is some of the stories that come to life.
So ultimately we went out and found 11 players and a coach. We actually had to find a few more than them, because as they were cut from their NFL team, we had to cut them from ours. And so we found a few extra folks, fortunately. And we brought a few of the stories to share with you guys today. So if you don't mind, we'll show some.
I crushed in the left side of my face, almost to the back of my head.
He had a broken jaw, he had a skull fracture to the point the brain was exposed.
They basically had to cut me from ear to ear.
To hear your child may not make it is very surreal.
I believe I was 4 or 5 years old. We were out on the water, Dog River.
My husband had just bought a jet ski, and I was like, please be careful.
We were going pretty fast. The only thing I remember is waving at my grandfather and us hitting the buoy, losing control. I was just so light that I kind of skimmed off the water at an angle, and I hit the pier face first. My grandfather made the 911 call.
We got down to the landing, and he was carrying AJ to us when we pulled up. As soon as we saw AJ, we knew we were in a serious situation. AJ had an orbital fracture.
He had a broken jaw.
My eyeball was hanging. Literally, this whole left side was just crushed.
And it just went into, okay, let's go mode. I had his dad talk to him. Just talk to him, tell him what we're doing. I mean, I've never forgot about that run.
When he got to the hospital, the doctors gave me a grief counseling card. And they said, if the worst comes to worst, this is somebody you can call. In my mind, I was thinking, I'm gonna have to bury my child.
Next thing I know, I remember waking up in the hospital. 8 metal plates and 6 screws on the left side of my face. Just a true miracle to be alive.
He's able to play this game that he loves thanks to the first responders that helped him. They have something in them that they want to give back to people.
To all the first responders, you're the true heroes of this world. They are the reason why I'm here. Just makes me thankful for everything that I have.
What they do every day matters. We all owe them so much, especially my family.
Oh my God! How are you?
I wanted to make sure that I told you thank you.
All right, so pretty, I think It's
was
a very heavy, I know it's a pretty heavy topic. So, look, I get very emotional when I've watched this many times before I had to go through every edit version as with Dan. But I think maybe it's worth just talking about also the approach we took to the way in which we executed these films in terms of the way that we partner with an award-winning director who is very close to this community, and so was able to bring out that level of authenticity and emotion. I mean, you're seeing players in a very vulnerable state, and I think that was a testament to Peter Berg, the director. But maybe just talk a little bit about that, and then we've got a couple of other ones. So if it gets too heavy, we can skip through them. But
yeah, the goal was to tell their story authentically, and we partnered with Pete Berg and his production company. Obviously, if you know Pete, he's very close to the NFL community through his movies and his shows. He's also very close to the first responder community and the military community. It's something that he has a real passion for. So when we started this project, we knew that he would be the right guy to partner with because he brings such a passion for all those communities together. And ultimately, we met all the players, we interviewed them and their family and the first responders. Obviously, it was a real joy for us creatively to be able to do something that's really different and really honors this community in an important way. I think it was also an interesting challenge to use the NFL property or leverage the NFL property and the players in a different way. Typically, as a marketer, as an advertiser, when you have an opportunity to work with athletes, it's typically through the lens of what they do, and how great they are at their sport. And I think consumers expect that kind of content, and they like that kind of content. I think why this content maybe was as engaging as it was is because we were telling their humanity, showing their humanity rather than how great they are on the gridiron, but how human they are and their personal story. And I think that went a long way towards why the content was seen as much and shared as much as it was, because it was, I think, a different way for fans of the NFL to experience the league and the players, to see a different side of them that I think is relatable, because as we said, unfortunately, so many people can relate to the idea of a first responder having an impact on their life.